This is episode 15. I'm always bad with these numbers, I don't know why. This is episode 15 and this is Lake Erie. And since today's episode is about Lake Erie, we should go to the shore and let's check it out from up close. First fun fact, and the evidently resulting consequence of this fun fact, Lake Erie is the shallowest lake of the 5 Great Lakes in North America. The deepest point of it is 63 meters, that's about 200 feet. And because of this, because it is so shallow, a lot of people call it the storm capital of North America, because strong winds that come from the Midwest can move this water and create such high tides and such high waves that in past years there have been records where waves would reach 4 to 5 meters high and the water level would exceed the datum by 2 meters. And in the past few days we saw exactly how unpredictable this lake behaves, because in the 5th or 6th episode, I think, the waves that came from that direction, the splash zone of those waves reached even these rocks. So you couldn't stand here because you would get just soaked right on spot. After the 1600s, the British colonizers and later the American settlers called the Erie tribe who lived here the neutrals, because this tribe wouldn't engage in warfare with the other Indian native tribes that lived in this area. As the time went on, the Iroquois, not sure how to pronounce their name, tribe conquered the Erie tribe and assimilated them into the 5 nations, which later became the 6 Nations organization, or I'm not so familiar with Indian history. Another fun fact, even though it is the smallest from the 5 Great Lakes, globally it's the 11th largest lake in the world. As for its formation, as I've mentioned in previous videos, the rocks that we found on that shore are sedimentary rocks. Much of the rocks that we can find here are shale rocks from this type. And shale is created by compacting mud. Now, as for the creation of Lake Erie, all of the Great Lakes were created by glaciers and erosions caused by glaciers around 14,000 years ago. And Lake Erie was the last of these lakes to be created, and the glacier that eroded the ground where the basin of Lake Erie is situated was very, very thin, and that is the reason why Lake Erie is so shallow. This was the period when the shale has formed that creates most of the rock composition of the shoreline and of the Lake Erie region. Now, in the past, the shoreline of Lake Erie was actually larger by 13 kilometers inland from the current shoreline, which means that the lands close to the shoreline are extremely fertile. And this was part of the reason why in Ohio and in Canada, in the Ontario region, wine production has got a foothold. And wine production is very prevalent because we have these fertile lands close to the lake, which can regulate the microclimate. Wine producers can have very stable years. For example, in the northern part of Lake Erie, in the Canadian side, people have been experimenting with wine production, and even though that spot lies outside of the wine production belt, the wine production sweet zone, which goes through Bordeaux and Hungary and southern Germany and parts of China, I think this latitude is around 40 degrees or 42 degrees. I'm not exactly sure about this, but I'm sure that my brother knows it. So check out his channel and you will find out. I'll put a link in the description. So because of this, near Ontario, on the Canadian side, the wine production has started to get a foothold as well, and wine producers from that part have started to create interesting wines. It remains for me to actually try these wines, but that's the topic of a new video. Local wines of Ohio. To my honest surprise, I wasn't wrong. That was and that is a wedding. I'm trying really hard to maneuver in such a way that I don't ruin their moment and their thing. But it's a bit difficult when people are moving around with me. So if we have a lake like this, we must have some way to feed the lake, some way to replenish the water in the lake, and some way to get the water out from the lake. Wow! There's a guy who did 2 backflips in a row. That was crazy. All right, so what feeds Lake Erie and where does it go? So its primary inlet is the Detroit River, and its primary outlet is the Niagara River, which of course is followed by the Niagara Falls. Another interesting thing about Lake Erie is that it has the shortest amount of time that water stays in the basin, around 2.5 years. As for its size, Lake Erie covers an area of approximately 26,000 square kilometers. That is about 26 million hectares, which, to make it easier for you to imagine, is about the size of Israel or El Salvador or North Macedonia. I have to say, the struggle is real, and the struggle continues in finding places to record videos at. Okay, I'm done with the short. I'm done with mostly everything that I had to do for today. Now I just have to finish this video. So, back to Lake Erie and back to the importance of Lake Erie in this region. Since it is filled by the Detroit River, Lake Erie facilitated the trade networks from the Midwest towards the Atlantic. So it was an incredibly important point of trade in the time of the 19th century. It was also a site of many wars, since its importance as a trading hub and an industrial place, many people wanted to control it. Both the Canadians and both the Americans wanted to get a hold of it. Today it is a peaceful water border between the two countries, divided with water lines for the different states that border it. And aside of the trade routes and aside of the history of this region, it was very important regarding industry as well. A lot of towns were founded on different kinds of industries, which thrived in the 19th and 20th century, but later in the past 50 years started to decay, and now they are referred to as the Rust Belt. Once there's also a myth relating to Lake Erie. There is said to be a Loch Ness-like monster called Bessie living in the lake, who has a snake-like head and is 11 meters long. The lighthouses around Lake Erie are very, very beautiful, and a lot of them still work. A lot of them became heritage places, preserved as historical monuments. Among tourists and enthusiasts, it's very common to search for shipwrecks, since the lake is very shallow, and because of the lot of wars that were fought here. For example, the Beaver War in 1813, if I'm not mistaken, was fought solely on Lake Erie between the Americans and the Canadians. And because of this, a lot of people go scuba diving in search of shipwrecks. Well, that's going to be it for today. See you guys tomorrow.